Wake up and welcome to Talk Black and Give Back. I'm coming to you today as a woman who believes that the stories that we tell our children are the seeds of their future. We've just wrapped up February, and I don't know about you, but my heart is still full. We've had the celebrations, the soul food, and the irreplaceable HBCU energy. Actually, just thinking when making this podcast, my daughter and I just celebrated her birthday at an HBCU Battle of the Bands. And let me tell you, it was amazing. If you've never been, honey, put it on your must-see list for next year. But as we move into late March, you might feel like I do. Things start to feel a little different, like the music is slowing down and we're all looking around to see where we're needed next. That's because we've reached a bridge. March the 25th was the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery. In countries across our home state, from the tobacco fields of Pitt County to the quiet, winding roads of Chatham, we use this time to shift. We're moving from the high energy of February into a deeper, quieter reflection on the ancestors who made all of our joy possible. For everyone listening today, whether you're resting on your porch or just getting home from work or school, I want us to take a second just to look at the ground beneath your feet. We often talk about making it or getting ahead, but we have to remember that the very path we're walking on was cleared by hands that weren't allowed to reap what they sowed. Our ancestors took the weight of forced labor on plantations and through the mercy of God and pure resilience turned it into a blueprint for excellence that we carry in our DNA today. We look back. We don't just look back and mourn what was lost during those times. We look back to reclaim the strength that our ancestors left for us. We remember them because they are the heartbeats in our chest and the reason we have the right to dream as big as we do. Now, I'll be honest with you. I didn't always know I had that right. As silly as that might sound, growing up here in the South in the 80s and 90s, sitting in my middle school and high school history classes, I struggled to find my place in the stories that they were telling. Back then, when the books talked about black people, they usually started and ended with slavery. So as a preteen, that did something to really shift my spirit. It limited what I thought was possible for myself. That's a heavy, sad thing to realize. But for a long time, I didn't see us as successful people or as leaders. I saw us as people who were owned and without a voice or too afraid to speak it. It wasn't until I started seeking out our history for myself, reading the stories they didn't put in the curriculum in my days, that I finally understood. We didn't start at slavery. We started at greatness. That's why this battle over our history today is so personal to me. If our children don't have a full story to reflect on, they can't dream the dreams that they were born to have. We have to give them the whole map so that they know exactly who they are and exactly who they come from. And listen, if you think this is just ancient history, only from my school days in the 80s and 90s, let me tell you about a night at my dinner table just a few years ago. My son was in the 7th grade at Hawfields Middle School. He's sitting there telling me about his day, and he says, with a straight face now, that he learned during Black History Month. Might I add, that's the crucial part of what I'm stating. Black History Month, he learned about Eli Whitney, the man who supposedly invented the cotton gin. I said, what? Why are you learning about Eli Whitney during Black History Month? Eli Whitney wasn't a black man. Eli Whitney was a white man. My husband and I were absolutely outraged. Not just because it was a lie, but because of the deep ignorance behind that lie. Now think about the logic. Why would a white man in the 1700s invent a machine just to give enslaved black people an easier time in the fields? They weren't trying to make our ancestors' lives easier. They were trying to make that whole process of picking cotton, that whole processing faster, and to make themselves richer. But when a teacher stands in front of a classroom and teaches a false narrative like that, it does two things. It robs the actual black inventor of his actual history, and it completely erases the fact that during that time, black people weren't even allowed to own their own thoughts, let alone their own inventions. In 1793, it was a time in our country where the Fugitive Slave Act had just been passed. So black people weren't even considered legal people. The teacher painted a false narrative, and sounds have been essentially, they were more able to use, if she had been able to use a little bit more common sense based on what was historically impossible under the laws at that time. So it was a wake-up call for me. That very moment was a wake-up call. It showed me that if we don't stay on top of what is being whispered in these classrooms, false history will travel from generation to generation until the truth is buried alive. And we cannot afford to have limited knowledge when it comes to our children's minds. It is detrimental, it is dangerous, and it is exactly why we have to keep our history accurate and alive. Now, with that in mind, let's talk about the world we're living in this March 2026. If you've been watching the news, you know there's a tug of war happening over our history, black history that is, a real battle for the narrative of our stories being told. Just this week at the United Nations, a resolution was passed calling the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime against humanity. It called for apologies and for real conversation about reparations. But the United States, our country, was one of the only 3 nations to vote no. Now, also included in that was Israel and Argentina. But how can we be American citizens living in the United States, our own home country, and they vote no to reparations or real conversations about the truth about what happened? This administration's stance was that we shouldn't rank historical crimes or talk about reparations for things that happened so long ago. But as a black woman, I know that history isn't long ago, when the blood is still on the land and on the hands of so many that are prospering in this country, like most of the people in our administration. We're seeing the Restoring Truth and Sanity executive order moving through our national parks while calling it patriotic history. They've even removed an exhibit at the President's house in Philadelphia because it focused too much on the enslaved people that George Washington owned. Now, my question to you is, how can that be too much to tell the whole truth? If we take out parts that make us uncomfortable, we aren't being patriotic. We're being dishonest. As a matter of fact, I would say we're telling a damn lie. So you might ask me why this matters, why it matters to me, and why am I focused on it so much? This just isn't happening in D.C. or Philadelphia. It's right here in North Carolina. We're seeing these same debates at our local school boards about divisive concepts. Let's be real for a second. Slavery was divisive. It literally split this country in half. If we teach our kids that it is just a different kind of job, or that enslaved people learned useful skills, as Governor DeSantis would have you believe, we're erasing the magnitude of our ancestors' survival. To the young people listening, you are smart enough to handle the truth, knowing that your ancestors survived a crime against humanity didn't make us victims. It makes us victors. It shows you that you can come from a lineage that cannot be broken, that you are strong and resilient. But if you let them take these truths out of our textbooks, we're leaving you without a map to go by. If you don't know where the holes are in the road, you're going to fall in the same ones that we did, and the same ones my mother and father did, and the same ones our grandparents did. So we remember the past so that we can move forward together. And together only works if we're all reading from the same book, guys. Now, for all of you grassroots warriors, if some of you are asking yourselves, what do we do next? I tell you, we don't just get angry, we get active. There are organizations right here in North Carolina that are standing in the gap while our politicians argue. Some of them include, we have the Dudley Flood Center in Raleigh. They have an initiative called History Counts. They are literally giving many grants to young people under 18 to lead their own social justice projects because they know that your voice is the most powerful one in the room. We have the Village of Wisdom in Durham, North Carolina. They have the Dreamship Fellowship, where they pay Black parents a stipend to sit down and design learning environments that actually protect Black genius. This is another organization that believes that our children's brilliance is our greatest resource. And then we have Black Child Development Institute in Greensboro. They're filling in the gaps in our schools. They're making sure our babies see their own brilliance in books that they read. So, and finally, let's talk about us. Talk Black and Give Back. We're right here in the trenches with you. We are dedicated to being a virtual home for your truth, a place where we refuse to let our history be sanitized or silenced. We are a grassroots effort fueled by the community, for the community, providing virtual tutoring, that's free, an online Black business directory, a free peer support services with our virtual mental health network. This month, I challenge you to pick one of us. Go on our websites. If you have $5, give it. If you have an hour, volunteer your time. If you have a child in school, go to the school board meetings and tell them, my child's history is not a divisive concept. It is a fundamental truth. We have so many people that are living without truth, that they're creating their reality based on opinions, and that's just no way to move forward together. Now, before I let you go, I want to leave you with this. We talked a lot about Black love in February. As a matter of fact, that's what our podcast was about. But I'm here to tell you that the greatest act of love is telling the truth. When we remember those who suffered on ships and in fields, we aren't dwelling on the past. We're honoring their sacrifice. We're saying, okay, I see what you went through, and I'm going to make damn sure it wasn't for nothing. Now, that's how we move forward. Not by closing our eyes, not by pretending it didn't happen, but by opening our eyes wider. So I've given you some points to think about this month. And I am Jennifer Nickerson-Turner, and this has been Talk Black and Give Back. Hold on to your history. Hold on to each other. And keep building that bridge. We'll talk again next month, but until then, take good care of yourselves.